Charlie Kirk is referring to the former Chicago Cub Moises Alou in terms of his batting stance. And he's also, I guess, referring to the batting stance being kind of a defensive crouch that like Jen Psaki and others are now taking in regards to
like what Cubs do.
Right, in Afghanistan and other things, I believe, and he's
a forced metaphor, I think. But
yes, and in this instance, he is desperately trying to help his producers find a photo of the stance.
He wants to see this guy's butt.
Let's try to figure out his metaphor for how Jen Psaki is like Moises Alou's batting stance.
So to retrain a batter like Moises Alou, who always had a really weird stance.
Can we get more volume at all, or is that it?
It would be very hard. He's only used to that. The same is true for Jen Psaki and John Kirby. So Jen Psaki has to get in front of the country, and all of a sudden, she has no one left to blame. You see, John Kirby, he can't blame the Oath Keepers on the withdrawal of Bagram Air Base. You see, Joe Biden can't blame white supremacy for the fact that the Taliban took over. He can't blame anti-vaxxers, insurrectionists, white supremacists. There's nowhere left to hide. That's not a good picture. No. I'll get a different one of Moises Alou's batting stance. Anyway, he had a very particular batting stance. No. I'll get the later Moises Alou. Okay, anyway. And that's his dad. I think his Moises Alou's father also played in the majors too. Didn't he?
That's true.
I was a huge baseball fan before they decided that they hated the country.
Oh, right.
All right. As they're looking it up. There it is right there. See? Nothing like your 10-year-old memory. That's it. Weird up and down bat. Yes, that's exactly right. You see how that is not how you hold a bat, everybody, with the elbows extended like that. That is a strange batting stance. Do you agree? That is a weird. Put that on the main screen for everyone to see. So what does Moises Alou, who urinated on his hands, and Jen Psaki have in common? More than you might think, actually. Well, Moises Alou and Jen Psaki both had a certain way of holding the bat or answering questions. And Jen Psaki... She doesn't know how to answer a question where she can't blame anti-vaxxers, oath keepers, insurrectionists, white supremacists, flyover country.
But what?
So like Moises Alou likes to hold a bat, Jen Psaki likes to field questions.
It's always such a tortured metaphor, but I've never seen him smile so widely, which was also pretty disturbing.
And, like, it would make a bit more sense if Alou was, like, somebody that flamed out of the league. He's trying to make a critique of Jen Psaki's position, which would mean that Alou's stance could not have success.
Yeah, Moises Alou won the most valuable player in a World Series.
So
he's like a legendary, amazing baseball player.
Right, the point is just like, so you're comparing her to one of the most successful baseball players of all time to critique her? Like, it sounds like you're kind of thirsting for a sake bomb.
And just to speak to what his critique is, which is like when the Democrats are in power, they have nowhere to hide. That's actually the most unimpeachable reason to vote for Democrats and to have them in power over the Republican Party, because that's all they do when, they can fundraise off of kids in cages and wear a kente cloth and say they're against the police and or against police brutality or whatever. When they're out of power, they can just go off for political propaganda content. When they're in power, you actually see where the rubber hits the road, and it's much more useful, in my opinion, from a political education standpoint. So from that perspective, I agree with Charlie, but I don't quite think I want to compare Jen Psaki, who I'll just say I do not like. I think any press secretary is going to be basically the most empowered liar in the country.
Yeah, don't normalize not liking presidents' press secretaries.
Yeah, exactly. But like Moises Alou has this weird batting stance that was extremely effective for him. Jen Psaki, like, unbelievable. I mean, talk about a bad sports metaphor. I just love that.
Yeah, I also just love imagining Charlie Kirk's producers finding photos of Felipe Alou, like in black and white, thinking this is the right guy.
Oh, dude, we knew he was old, but we didn't know he was that old.
And the funny thing about that Alou batting stance is it doesn't look that weird in photos. Like it looks weirder when he's in video, when he's, he kind of points the bat straight up in the air as opposed to like over his shoulder and stuff like that. Anyway, I mean,
isn't his squatting stance a little odd too?
It's a little bit, back on its haunches.
Right.
I think, oh man, I don't know where to, like, I just love the idea that Charlie Kirk, and I encourage more conservative propagandists to follow his route of saying, yeah, I'm just done with sports. Sports are bad and too woke. Because if you will cede that territory to us, I think we can do a lot with it.
Oh, I certainly do. I mean, that would be great, right? To have them completely disengage from even the more conservative sports. Like baseball as an organization is pretty conservative, but I want, conservative pundits completely disengage with football, for example, and just let it be something leftists engage with, and then we can have critiques about player safety and player pay and how these billionaires hoard way too much of their wealth when they own their teams, and it needs to go more towards these players who have short-term careers. And then we can have a conversation about college football, cede that territory to us entirely. Talk about labor rights in college football, how the players need to be fairly compensated or compensated at all. Then we can have that conversation. But like, we actually may not even need them to have a mass exodus from sports commentary if you like the Charlie Kirk sticks to metaphors like that. One that doesn't make any sense at all.
Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.